I'm here with Warren Gould, our upper school director, and also the teacher of our capstone students each year. And Warren, I'd love to talk with you a little bit about the whole idea of capstone. When we devised the upper school way back in the 2005, 6, 7, we envisioned the capstone as the metaphor suggests, sort of the last thing that's put on to show what students have learned. Is that an apt description of the capstone?
It's, in some ways, I think it is. The capstone, as it's evolved at Trinity, is, I would say, first and foremost, an opportunity for students to go deep into something that they love. So in that sense, it absolutely is a capstone.
Very missional for Trinity with a rich, unhurried education.
Very missional. And it's something that is a culmination of a journey through a collection of years where more and more they are understanding who they are and what they love and what their gifts are. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, absolutely a capstone. In other ways, because they're so varied, they may not be something that's pulling together knowledge from across a collection of core academic areas. But I don't think that really ever was the vision of the program.
Mm-hmm. It does require students to integrate, I think, a number of different things in their work, right? Depending on the projects that they choose.
That's right. Always multifaceted, always involving them in drawing on different areas, tapping different skill sets, sometimes things that they're not even aware yet that they possess.
Right. And I think we've seen students really discover really amazing things about themselves and their abilities and what they may really enjoy doing in life, right?
Absolutely. I can think of some just really great stories of a student who was uncomfortable talking to people and yet found himself doing a whole lot of networking with adults and discovering his voice in a lot of ways through this kind of experience. I can think of a student who set out to design a video game and ended up learning so much of the physics beneath that when he walked onto campus as a college student in the fall, he actually knew a lot more than a lot of his peers at his university.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for your leadership of the capstone projects, and it's always exciting to me every May to just come and witness those. Each senior gives about a 20-minute presentation. You want to talk about that maybe?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, most of them are going to be in the 20-minute range. Tightness and efficiency, elegant efficiency of their presentations is
That's
one
part
of the
their
challenges.
learning, right?
It's part of their learning. And so in that way, their rhetoric classes, they not infrequently talk about how helpful those classes have been. So they are standing up in front of an audience and they're all dressed up and they're really doing a lot more than just kind of reporting in on what they've done. I'm encouraging them to talk in terms of key takeaways, arguments, key ideas that they've encountered and wrestled with across their capstone experience. And sometimes they go quite a bit longer. We've had really beautiful violin performances that went beyond. We've had original one-act plays that were part of a presentation.
Yeah. And students often write reflections as well on these, right?
That's right.
Talk about that a little.
They'll write a collection of reflections that are designed to help them discover, uncover things that they're learning through the process of all this really rich capstone work. As an old English teacher, I firmly believe that writing is a great way to do that, to process and reflect. And so as their capstone teacher, it's a real privilege to me to be involved at that level and seeing the kinds of things that the seniors are learning.
Yeah, that's great. was just with kindergartners and TK students and parents in the last couple of weeks, and they were talking about their presentations in those classes. And I think of the whole arc of a Trinity student, from that TK circus where they have to stand up and do something there.
Right.
Or in the first grade where they do Aesop's Fables, and then they move on up into fourth grade for Pharaoh Day. And it's really wonderful to see these students develop through middle school when they have to do their sanctuary presentations. And this really is a culmination of that whole Trinity arc.
It really is. You can think of it in some ways as a kind of hidden curriculum. It's not something that we typically map across the years, although certainly those lower school experiences you've described are really planned and intentional. Others are not. In the upper school, a student who gets up to give a devotion to Cornerstone is having that really incredible experience of speaking publicly in ways that they might not be able to at a different school. When they get to senior year and they are talking to an audience about their capstone experiences, it's just one last opportunity to be that young person speaking cogently, coherently, and in interesting, engaging ways about something that they really care about.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that I hear from our alums that they appreciate about a Trinity education is that they learn how to do this, how to speak in public, how to present, how to speak persuasively, and how valuable that skill is in the world, in college and in life and work. Well, thanks for talking with me about this. Let's hear some more from our students, and then we'll come back at the end. Okay, so we're going to talk now more about these capstone projects, and Catherine, I'm going to ask you to go first. You've already presented your project. Some of the seniors do that earlier in the year, and many of the seniors are doing it right now, here at the end of May, presenting. And I remember hearing about your project with Macanio Christian Academy. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, the first part of my project, I collected images as well as information about all the children that went to Macanio, and I created profiles so that way sponsors could learn more about the children that go there, which would be able to give them more opportunities and just kind of help them with their education. And for the second part of my project, I helped create 2 blogs, so that way Trinity's 3rd grade and Macanio's 3rd grade could write back and forth to one another, so that way they could get to know each other and just kind of connect the 2 communities together better.
Yeah, that's great. And just in case there are folks that don't know what Macanio is, tell us a little bit about Macanio Christian Academy.
Yes, Macanio is a school in South Africa, and it is basically a Christian school that Trinity is partnered with, and they have children from TK to 6th grade, and they're an ever-growing school that we take trips and sponsor and support.
And you have been
Yes,
to Macanio?
I have been to Macanio. I went in January of 2017, and I got to be able to meet most of the children that I have helped create profiles for.
So that trip inspired this capstone.
Yes, it did a lot. I went there and I was really inspired just to kind of help the children that I met. They were so inspirational to me, and I loved getting to know them more. They were just all wonderful, so I wanted to come back and help them a lot. So capstone was actually pretty easy for me to decide what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I really appreciate the way that you worked with our 3rd grade teachers to make that connection, to bring it home to Trinity, so thank you for that. Caroline, can you talk a little bit about your project, which we enjoyed the art exhibit immensely.
Yeah. So for my project, I decided to help my fellow senior artists kind of get their name out there a little bit. So what I did was I took most of their senior portfolio artwork and some of their capstone work, because many of them continued to do their
And this was how many artists were
There were
involved?
6 of us total. And so I took all 6 people and culminated all of their artwork into one space and curated it in a way that would lead you into each person and try to get to know them better. And then from there, I just had the event itself. And so the community and Trinity's community got to enjoy all of their art and see it in a professional, displayed way.
And where was it?
It was at the Power Plant Gallery. It's in American Tobacco campus.
Yeah. We were there a couple of Saturdays ago and
Yes.
really enjoyed that exhibit. It was wonderful. Walking around with the artists and having them explain their work. Very powerful. Yeah. So I think this was the first Trinity art exhibit.
It was, which was a really big step for Trinity's art department, and I'm overly joyed and extremely excited that I was the person who got to make that step for this community.
Yeah. And I think that someone else is going to try to continue this project, right?
Yeah, hopefully
Next year?
next year, Hope Muter, I think she's contemplating right now as a junior, deciding to do this next year.
Yeah. It's really exciting when you seniors develop these programs and then are able to hand it off to see how that continues. I know that happened this year with a program in the sports marketing, and 2 more seniors took it over this year, so it's great to see that. So, Monica, how about your project? We want to hear more about it.
Yeah, so my capstone was basically just kind of researched out the entire year for Mexican American studies. So while it mainly focused on Mexicans and their history in the United States, I also kind of expanded it to like Hispanics and Latinos living in the United States, because I think oftentimes it's something that people forget exist. And as a Mexican myself, I just figured I wouldn't let them be forgotten, especially a lot of the inspiration came from last year. We took in Humanities 11, you learn about American history, but there's a lot of like Mexican history that's intertwined with it that's never taught. So I just kind of wanted to be the person to, get that out there and show that they were here.
Yeah. Who helped you with this project?
A lot of the help that I've received has been from Ms. Davis, so our old diversity coordinator. She's the one that kind of like led me to do this and really inspired me and motivated to pursue this. She's also been really helpful in terms of like helping me work out things out and like get the information that I needed.
Yeah, that's great. And when are you presenting your project?
So I'm presenting not this Friday, but the next Friday at 3:20. So it's one of the last capstones.
Yeah. So any of our parents that want to come and see Mr. Gould has a schedule for all of the presentations, and there's several that are happening each day through the next couple of weeks. So we're excited to see that. Jacob, tell us about your project.
So for my project, I decided to raise honeybees. So I've always been interested in animals and the environment. And well, when I figured out I could raise like 60,000 bees in my backyard and help the environment, I was like, well, why not?
How many bees?
60,000.
60,000.
Yes, sir. So I started wanting to raise and like build a successful colony. And that kind of just grew from like knowledge of there's a really big problem with bees right now, and we're having to import them and everything because many bees are being killed by pesticides. So a lot of beekeepers are trying to figure out like how you can raise bees successfully without them being killed by pesticides or other like factors now, like mites, which is what eventually happened to my bees. But I want to like go back, and I learned a bunch about just so many things while raising bees.
What's one thing that you learned that you didn't know before?
Well, patience. Like I learned a lot of patience. Like so you have to change the feed box like 3 times a week, and trying to get bees off of a box covered in sugar is like extremely hard because you got to like, you don't want to kill them obviously, but then like you don't want to spend 2 hours, which sometimes I would spend 2 hours trying to get bees off of a sugar box, which was annoying. So I learned patience and just how much that can help with anything really.
That's great. And Anna and Avery, tell us about your project.
So for our club, we had girls ranging from 5th through 8th grade, so we had a pretty wide age range. And like Anna said, we ran the club through a program called Girls Who Code. So every Saturday we would meet for 2 hours with the girls, and they were on a website called Codesters, which was kind of like almost like games, just like beginner activities for them to start like kind of getting into coding and learning it. And it is very like beginner's level, but we got to see them kind of progress from the beginning to the end and how much they learned. And like a lot of the girls who really liked things like math really did really well at it.
Yeah. Hannah, where did you all get this idea? Where did it come from?
So Avery and I were actually in the club a couple years ago. I was in it for 2 years and it was discontinued for this year. So we wanted to be the people who kept it going, and I just really liked the whole like one big part of Girls Who Code is empowering women in technology, and I thought that was something I was really interested in, and I really wanted to like stress that to the lower school too.
One of the things that I have appreciated about these kinds of capstones are the leadership that you seniors show to younger students, the modeling and mentoring. That's incredibly important and impactful. So thanks for doing that. How many young girls were involved?
We had about 12 girls.
12, and you met on Saturday mornings. Yeah, that's good. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what you learned. Some of you have talked about that, but what are things that you think you'll take with you from your capstone? This is part of the whole rationale of doing this, is that we think this kind of learning and demonstration of learning really helps you develop skills and demonstrate abilities that will serve you well for the rest of your life. So can some of you speak to that? What's something that you learned?
For me, it was like I've never really been in like a position of leadership like that with like younger girls. So in our Latin class, we actually did a project where we taught the lower school.
Yeah.
And I found like it was interesting. Like I thought I would be really nervous up in front of them, but I was really comfortable. And I think a lot of that came from like being in front of the girls all the time and like being in that position of leadership with them.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I learned a lot of communication and organizational skills when I did my capstone. Communication-wise, I had to talk to a lot of people when I was trying to set up my blog platform, because I had people who were in South Africa who I had to communicate with, so that way I could get everything set up there with technology, as well as kind of talking with lower school teachers, Mr. Gould. I talked with so many different people, and I had to kind of keep everything organized while I was doing that as well. And even in the beginning of my project, I had to keep information organized for around 90 different children. So I had to keep all the images straight and just the different information for all of them. So I learned a lot about that and just kind of how to communicate with all different types of people, as well as just kind of keep my entire project organized.
Yeah. Monica, what would you say?
Well, since my project was kind of about a lot of research based, I kind of had to learn to keep like politics and like my personal opinion aside from like giving the facts, because a lot of it is very rooted in like political issues or things of that nature, and so you have to learn how to keep your own personal beliefs on one side and then like what's actually facts on the other side. So that was interesting to see play out throughout the entirety of my capstone.
Interesting, yeah. And Jacob, how about you?
Well, one thing that I probably learned was like leadership as well. Like even though I'm not like really like leading all the bees, like I am, all the decisions that I was making was affecting them. And so I chose to go all organic, which was like a thing that not a lot of like beekeepers are doing currently. And so that it's just kind of like every decision that I make affects them, and I wanted to like weigh like the positives and negatives and kind of figure out like what's the best. So decision making was a big one that I learned.
Yeah.
With that.
Great. Caroline, I think you learned a thing or two, didn't you?
Just a few things. I learned a lot of design aspects when having to curate a space. There's a lot that goes into it that you wouldn't really think about in the beginning. And so Caitlin Kelly at the Power Plant Gallery, she taught me a lot about like organizational skills for curating and just smaller things that you wouldn't really think about in the curation process. And also I learned a lot of communication skills, because artists are not the easiest people to communicate with, and asking for things can lead to difficulty in getting those things back, because I know that they're really busy and they're more focused on their art than they are on other things, which is important for the show. So it was an interesting aspect to be put in, to ask for things even though I knew that they weren't quite ready yet.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if any of you could speak to, did the capstone impact your thinking about colleges or thinking about majors or thinking about even possible vocations and jobs in the future or things you might do for avocations in your life? Anyone want to tackle that one?
I'll go. So what I decided to do with my project, so it was research, but I ended up turning it into like little lesson plans. So it's divided into 12 lessons at the moment. And so I never really thought about being a teacher, but like this project kind of showed me that that's not what I'm meant for. Like it's very tedious to have to go through and like do a lot of slideshow presentations and then make presentation notes. So it's kind of steered me away even more from that, but it's actually kind of helped me realize that maybe I do like making the presentations and I do like demonstrating them, because I did do that for Mr. Bridges' Humanities 11 class. They asked me to come in and give them a brief summary about some of the things that I was doing, because they were going to talk about some stuff. But I did learn that I do like to be up there and present something, just not in a like the form a teacher would do.
Yeah.
So.
Did you develop those lesson plans for a particular age group in mind?
High
Schoolers or younger
Yeah,
children?
they were more like high schoolers, just because it like, again, like I said, like Humanities 11 was what kind of like drove me to do this.
Right.
And so it's kind of meant to kind of run a little bit parallel to that, kind of like
Right.
American history, but it's a little different. So it's kind of targeted more to like a high school age.
That's great. Glad you sort of tested that sense of vocation and see where that all leads. Catherine, what would you say?
I did a lot of writing for my capstone, which I knew I liked before, but I think it also just kind of reaffirmed that was one of the things I could potentially be interested, maybe like English in the future as well. And also after traveling to South Africa, I learned a whole lot, and I definitely know now that I would like to travel and go and see kind of more parts of the world, because I felt like I learned just so much from being in a different environment. And I just think that's something that I would definitely want to try to do more later in life, go to different places and kind of see how I can like help there, or see just kind of what I can learn when I'm there too.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Avery, Anna?
I mean, kind of similar like to Monica's talking about like lesson plans and teaching. There obviously is like a large like teaching aspect in our club, and just being patient with the girls and helping them when they needed help. But it was also really rewarding to see how like we could help them and how they, learn from what we knew. And also just like sometimes it was hard for us to overcome problems, because coding can be really difficult. So just from a teacher's point of view, like going over and helping them, sometimes it was like just a lot of problem solving.
Yeah. Jacob or Caroline, you want to?
Yeah, I'll go. I think that doing this project has led me to a further interest in design, maybe curation. I'm not really sure where that design knowledge will lead me in the future, but hopefully to a job in that area. It would be really fun to get to work with all the art personally and get to make the artists kind of their dreams come true.
It's great. Jacob, are there bees in your future?
Hopefully. I mean, I've always known that I wanted to do something with animals, either as like a job or anything in the future. This kind of just like further pushed that along. I really like working with anything to do with the environment. So this was a good experience overall.
That's great. And I wonder if you have any advice for the juniors coming up behind you or other students about choosing a capstone. Any pieces of wisdom?
Make sure you really like it. You're going to be working on it for lots and lots of hours. So I would advise, if you're planning to do something and you're like, I kind of like this, but I'm not quite sure, try something else. Make sure that you really like it. Because there's just a lot of work that goes into it, and it makes it more fun. So.
Seeing a lot of heads nod. How many hours do you think you put in?
I've spent at least like 60 hours just researching. So
Wow.
Put in like, I think I calculated one time, like it was over 200.
Over 200.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So mine was definitely in the hundreds too. So
I think mine was like 90-ish hours.
Yeah. Any other pieces of wisdom?
Just choose something you love.
yeah.
Choose something.
Might as
Make
well.
it.
You gotta work on it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get too stressed about it either though when you're picking. Like I know I had no idea what I wanted to do until after I got back from Africa, and it just kind of fell into place from there. So I feel like you can just kind of trust that the idea will come to you when you need it. So, and it can be something that you love a lot, and it will all work out in the end. So
Well, I just want to thank all of you for talking with me today. I think this year's capstones have been especially rich and diverse. And you all are just a sampling of the whole class, and it's really brings to fruition our vision for what we wanted these capstones to be. So thank you for all your hard work, and I hope you have learned a lot. And I know I interviewed a couple of alums earlier this year when they came back, and I asked them what they remembered and loved about Trinity. They mentioned their capstone projects as something that they still think a lot about and that they learned a lot from. So I hope that's true for you when you come back to Trinity in the future, and I hope you will. Thanks for joining me today. So Warren, this was a great group of seniors that shared, and it's just a sampling of what you get to see in depth. What are some of your reflections about these seniors who shared in their projects?
So many reflections. I love capstones that give back. So if you think of what Anna and Avery did running a Girls Who Code club, they did Girls Who Code when they were younger. And you heard them talk about how they wanted to give back, and they absolutely did. One impact of Girls Who Code is that this year, for the first time, there are as many girls in our introductory computer programming class as there are boys.
Wow.
And I think you know how great that is.
That's a great statistic,
Yeah.
Beating the odds.
Catherine, her Macanio-focused capstone, giving back. She gave back to Macanio Academy. She gave back to our own lower school by connecting the two schools together. So really beautifully missional.
Yeah, and that was became a real labor of love for her too.
It did.
Right?
It did. Her work continued even after the capstone was over. Jacob talking about his bees.
Yeah.
I was so impressed with the depth of his thinking and the ways he reflected. He did some really beautiful theological reflecting.
Yeah, I remember some of that from his presentation. Really rich.
And I hadn't heard him until today talk about leadership. Very interesting to consider the ways he was learning about leadership by his involvement with bees.
Yeah, it's great. And I know we both enjoyed going to the art exhibit and seeing what Caroline pulled together.
What a great example of giving back. It's hard to overstate the importance of that capstone for the 6 seniors in that show, for Trinity itself, for the arts at Trinity. Yeah, really another great example of giving back.
Yeah, and Caroline herself is an amazing artist, but she also really made it her job to showcase her peers.
That's right.
And I love that non-nobis kind of spirit. And
Yeah.
and then Monica, really looking at a part of history that is challenging and complicated, and trying to bring voice to people that whose voices have been marginalized. And
I've appreciated the way she's spoken up across her time in the upper school in really respectful and eloquent ways, and helped, I think, the upper school community appreciate some of the complexities that she encounters just as a young Mexican-American woman. And so this capstone for her is a very powerful capstone for that part of who she is and what she's going to give to the humanities faculty as a collection of slides and lessons.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact
would
that has on our curriculum.
Be
And
very interesting.
so, well, how can folks experience some of this? Some of our parents could come and see some of these presentations, right?
And we would love them to come. One of the great gifts for a senior in his or her capstone presentation is a good audience.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to include a link to the remaining capstone presentations.
Yeah, we'll put the schedule up and
Yep.
folks can
And
see.
would love anyone to come.
It's great. Well, thank you for your time today, and thanks for your leadership in this program.
It's a delight. Yeah.
All right. Non-Nobis.